I've been driving trucks for about 12 years now. Night runs are mostly what I do. Less traffic, less hassle. I like the quiet. That night I was hauling a load of industrial air filters from Albuquerque to Salt Lake. Nothing exciting, just work. It was late October, cold for that time of year. A kind of dry cold that cracks your knuckles. I stopped at Love's in Grants around 11 p.m. to fuel up and grab a coffee. The parking lot was almost empty, just a few other rigs and a white sedan sitting way off by the air pump. I was standing there pouring my coffee when I noticed a girl walk up from the side of the building. She couldn't have been more than 20, wearing a thin gray hoodie and jeans, no jacket. Her arms were crossed tight against her chest. She came right up to me, not shy at all. "Hey, you heading north?" I said, "Yeah, more or less." "Can I get a ride? Just a gallop, I'll pay you." I told her I don't normally take passengers, company policy, also just common sense. She nodded like she expected that answer, but she didn't walk away. She just stood there shivering. Her hands were shaking bad, not from cold. I've seen people shake from cold before. This was different. This was nerves. She said her boyfriend threw her out of the car on the highway and she'd been walking for 2 hours. Her phone was dead, no money. I asked why he'd do that. She looked at the ground and said, "He gets angry. I don't want to talk about it." That part I believed. I've seen enough of that kind of thing. So I told her fine, gallop only. She could sit in the passenger seat. Don't touch anything. She said thank you about 5 times. We got on the road. She didn't say much at first, just stared out the window. I asked if she wanted something to eat. She said no. I asked if she had somebody to call when we got to Gallup. She said her sister lived there, that she'd be fine. Then about 20 minutes outside Grants, she started acting weird. Not scared weird, distracted weird, like she was listening for something. She kept glancing at her phone, even though she said it was dead. Then she'd glance at the door handle, then back at me. I asked if she was okay. She said yeah, too fast. Then she said, "Do you have a lot of money on you?" I laughed, not because it was funny, because it was a strange question from a hitchhiker. I told her I had maybe $40. Why? She shook her head and said no reason, just curious. That put me on alert. I've been driving long enough to know when something's off. She wasn't asking for a ride anymore. She was sizing me up. So I changed the subject, asked about her sister. What did she do for work? She said waitress. Then she said bartender. Then she said she wasn't sure, actually. That's when I knew I was making a mistake. I told her I needed to pull over and check a strap on the load. That was a lie. I just wanted an excuse to stop somewhere with lights. There was a rest area about 10 miles ahead. I figured I'd pull in and get out of the truck and tell her sorry, but this isn't working, and leave her there. She must have figured out what I was doing because her whole demeanor changed. The nervous shaking stopped. She sat up straight. Her voice went flat. "Don't stop." I said I had to. "No, you don't. Keep driving." I looked over at her. Her hand was in her hoodie pocket, not balled up like a fist, steady, holding something. I couldn't see what, but she wasn't hiding it. I said, "What's in your pocket?" She didn't answer, just stared at the road ahead and said, "My friends are going to meet us at the next exit. Just do what I say and you won't get hurt." My stomach turned. I didn't speed up or slow down. I just kept driving at 62, same as before, like nothing was happening. But my mind was racing. The next exit was 6 miles. No idea how many friends, no idea what they had. Could be a knife, could be a gun, could be 2 guys with a tire iron. I thought about swerving, making a scene, running off the road into the ditch. But at 60 miles an hour, that's a good way to roll the truck. And even if I didn't, I'd be stuck in a dark ditch with her and whoever showed up. So I did something stupid. I reached over and grabbed her wrist. Not hard, just enough to keep her hand in the pocket. She yelled at me to let go. I said, "Not until you show me what's in there." She pulled back hard. I held on. The truck drifted toward the shoulder. I had to let go to correct the wheel. She yanked her hand out. It was a small revolver, black, looked old. She pointed it at my ribs and said, "Pull over at the next exit." I pulled over. Not because I was scared of her, I was scared of what was waiting. If I pulled over now on the dark highway, her friends might not even be there yet. I had maybe 5 minutes before they arrived. That was my only window. I put the truck in neutral and set the brake. She kept the gun on me. Told me to put my hands on the wheel. I did. Then I opened my door. She screamed at me to close it. I was already moving. I jumped down onto the shoulder and ran, not away from the highway, toward it, into the headlights of oncoming traffic. A semi blared its horn. I almost got hit. I didn't care. I heard a pop, not loud, a gunshot. But she fired from inside the cab and the window was up. The bullet hit the headrest. I felt the air change next to my ear. I ran across the median and kept running. Another truck pulled over ahead of me. The driver must have seen something. I banged on his door until he let me in. He asked what the hell was going on. I couldn't even talk for a second, just pointed back at my rig. By the time we got the police out there, she was gone. My truck was still running, door open. The gun wasn't there anymore, neither was her phone or anything else. Just a single black glove on the passenger seat, too big for her hand. They never found her. They found tire tracks at the next exit where another vehicle had been waiting. 4 sets of footprints, 3 male, 1 female. They led into the desert and disappeared. I still drive that route sometimes. I always check the passenger seat before I start the engine, even though I know no one's there. And every time I pass that rest area in the dark, I slow down just a little. Not because I'm looking for anything, just because I can't help it. I was 21. I'd been with my boyfriend for about 8 months. I thought things were okay. They weren't. We drove up to Maine together for a weekend, and somewhere on the drive back, he just told me. Said he'd been seeing someone else. Said it like he'd been holding it in for a while and was almost relieved to finally put it down. I told him to pull over. He did, and I got out. I didn't scream, didn't cry. I just got out and closed the door, and he drove away. I think part of him expected me to get back in. I didn't. I stood on the side of that highway and just breathed for a minute. It was getting dark, cold the way Maine gets in the evening, even when it's not technically cold yet. I had signal, but not enough for a ride share to find me. I started walking. I walked for maybe 20 minutes before I heard it, the sound of a truck slowing down behind me. It was an older Ford pickup, faded red, the kind of red that's been sitting in sun and weather for years and gone dull. Bench seat inside. The passenger window came down and a man leaned over and asked if I needed a ride. He was maybe mid to late 50s, heavy-set, baseball cap pulled low, gray stubble, the kind of face that spent a lot of time outdoors. He looked tired more than anything, not threatening, just a man in a truck on a highway at dusk. I hesitated. I stood there with my hand on the door, and every instinct I had was having a conversation with every practical reality I was facing. It was getting dark. I was alone. I had nowhere to go. I got in. The cab smelled like cigarettes and old fast food, cluttered, a coffee cup in the holder, some papers on the dash, a jacket bunched up between us on the bench seat. It felt lived in, the kind of truck someone spends real time in. He pulled back onto the road and asked where I was headed. I told him the next town. He nodded and said he could get me there. For a few minutes it was quiet. Then he asked why a young, beautiful girl like me was out on the road alone at this hour. I hesitated. Then I just told him. Said my boyfriend had confessed to cheating on the drive and I got out of the car. He was quiet for a second. Then he said that guy sounds like a real fucker. Said it matter-of-factly, no drama, like he was just calling it what it was. I almost laughed. I said, yeah, something like that. We drove for a bit. I watched the road and tried to decompress and told myself I'd made the right call getting out of that car. I was starting to feel slightly better. That's when I noticed the gun on the dashboard. It was just sitting there, a pistol. I looked at it for maybe 2 seconds, then looked back at the road. Told myself people carry in Maine didn't mean anything. I started noticing from my peripheral that he was looking at me. Not a glance. Looking, then looking back at the road, then looking again. I kept my eyes forward. Then he looked over one more time, and I turned my head without meaning to, and our eyes met. He smiled. Then he put his hand on my lap. I moved it off immediately and shifted toward the door. He didn't react to that, just kept driving like nothing had happened. That non-reaction scared me more than if he'd said something. Then he unzipped his trousers. He told me what he wanted. His voice was calm, completely calm, like this was just part of the drive. I started crying. I couldn't stop it. I begged him to let me out, told him I wouldn't say anything. Told him I just wanted to go home. My hands were shaking, and I was pressed against the door, and I was 21 years old on a dark road in Maine, and I have never felt that kind of fear before or since. He suddenly slammed his palm against the steering wheel, hard enough to make me jump. Then he pulled over. He got out, came around to my side, yanked the door open. His whole face had changed, red, jaw tight, eyes different from the man who had asked if I needed a ride. He screamed at me to get out, called me a stupid Indian bitch, like I had done something to him, like I was the problem. I got out. He got back in and drove away. I stood on the side of the road again. Different road, same darkness. I called my parents. I couldn't get the words out for the first few minutes, just crying. My dad stayed on the phone with me until someone came. I've thought about that moment so many times, the palm on the steering wheel, the way everything changed after it. I don't know what it meant. I don't know if something in him shifted, or if he made a calculation, or if I reminded him of someone, or if he just decided I wasn't worth it. I don't know why he let me go. That's the part I carry, not what happened, what almost did, And that one moment where something changed in him that I will never have an explanation for. I still don't know why he let me go. I think about that every single day. I had a delivery in Memphis by 6 a.m., and I was making decent time until the radio crackled and the weather service broke in with a flood advisory. Flash flooding reported about 18 miles ahead, roads possibly compromised. It had been raining for about 2 hours already. Not violent rain, just steady and heavy, the kind that don't let up. My wipers were working hard, and my visibility was maybe 150 feet. I slowed down and started watching the shoulders. I wasn't going to risk it. Flood water on a dark highway with a loaded truck is how you end up on the news. So when I saw the lights of a gas station come up on the right, a Sunoco, small, one of them old ones with a little attached store, I pulled in. It was just after 11. I parked, killed the engine, and sat there a minute listening to the rain on the roof. Then I went inside. The store was empty except for the cashier, a woman maybe mid-50s, heavyset, reading something behind the counter. She nodded at me when I came in. I nodded back. I grabbed a pack of Marlboro Reds from the rack behind her, paid, then went to the back where the drinks were to grab a Gatorade and figure out how long I was going to wait this out. I was standing in the drink aisle, door open, cold air coming out, when I heard the bell above the entrance go off. A man had walked in. I noticed him from maybe 30 feet away. Average height, dark jacket, jeans. Nothing about him stood out at first. But I looked again, and that's when I registered it. His jacket was dry. His jeans were dry. His hair was dry. He'd just walked in from a storm that had been dumping rain for 2 hours straight, and he looked like he'd come in from a clear evening. I stared, trying to really make sense of what I was seeing. I thought maybe he'd had an umbrella. Maybe he'd parked right at the door. I looked past him through the glass, and I couldn't see an umbrella. I couldn't see a car parked close to the entrance either, just my truck and a beat-up Civic that I figured belonged to the cashier. The lot beyond that was empty and dark. I grabbed my Gatorade and stayed where I was. He walked toward the counter slowly, and that's when I saw his shoes, work boots, and they were muddy. Not a little muddy, caked, like he'd been walking through wet field or soft ground, the kind of mud that takes more than a parking lot puddle. Dry jacket, dry hair, muddy boots. I was still trying to work that out when I noticed he was carrying something. His left hand was down at his side, and he had a Ziploc bag, one of the big gallon ones, and there was something inside it, wrapped in what looked like a dark cloth or maybe a shirt. I couldn't tell. He was holding it loose, not like it was heavy, more like he'd just forgotten he was holding it. I moved up toward the counter to pay for my Gatorade. I got within maybe 8 or 10 feet of him, and a horrible smell hit me. I don't want to over-describe it. It was bad. It was the kind of smell that registers in your chest before your brain names it. Old and warm and wrong. I actually stopped walking for half a second. He stepped up to the counter and put a bill down. The cashier picked it up, and I watched her face change slightly. Just a small thing. The way you react when something's off, but you're at work and you keep it professional. She held the bill by the corner. It was wet, not damp, soaked, like it had been sitting in water. He pointed at the hand sanitizer on the little rack by the register. She bagged it, and he took it and picked up his change without counting it and walked out. Neither of them said a word the whole transaction. I set my Gatorade on the counter. The cashier looked at me, and I looked at her, and she said quietly, "Did you smell that?" It wasn't really a question. I said, "Yeah." She didn't say anything else, just scanned my drink. I went back to my truck and sat there. The rain was still coming down. I watched the lot and the road beyond it for a good 10 minutes. No headlights pulled out, no engine turned over. The lot stayed exactly as it was. My truck, the Civic, empty pavement, and darkness past the tree line. He'd walked back out into that rain on foot and just disappeared into it. There was nowhere obvious to go. No building nearby, no side road I could see. He was just gone. I waited out the flood advisory and got back on the road around 1 a.m. Made my delivery in Memphis by 6 and didn't think about it too much after that. Filed it under weird and moved on. Then, about 5 days later, I was in a diner just outside of Cookville, coming back east on a return run, and the TV above the counter had local news on. They'd found an abandoned car off a rural road in Putnam County, right along that same corridor of 70 I'd been on that night. Inside, they found a woman. She'd been there a while, they said, and they said it carefully, the way news people do when they're leaving something out. But the guy sitting next to me had his phone out, and he showed me what the actual report said. She'd been decapitated. I didn't say anything. I just sat there with my coffee. I've thought about the math of it, the location, the timing, the smell, the bag, the mud on his boots from walking through ground that had been soaked by 2 days of rain, the hand sanitizer. I don't know that it was him. I want to be clear about that. I don't know. But I was standing 8 feet away from that man. I was in the same room, and whatever he had in that bag, whatever was wrapped in that cloth, he carried it in one hand and set a wet bill on the counter with the other and bought hand sanitizer and walked back out into the rain. And I let him.